What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and I am joined once again by Ricky, who's going to join this discussion with me. Today, we are going to pit the ZT-0562 against the Benchmade Griptilian against the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I have always been aware of what people call the holy trinity of super high-end production knives, which is, of course, Chris Reeve, Rick Hinderer, and Mick Strider. And I think many people are going to be familiar with that. But this level of production U.S. knives, the Benchmade Spyderco ZT, I think is another holy trinity. And within that holy trinity is, of course, the most popular models between each manufacturer, the ZT-0562, the Benchmade Griptilian, and the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Yes, I know there are other amazing flagship models like the Manix 2 for Spyderco, the 940 for Benchmade, and geez, a number of models for ZT. But I think most people will agree these are probably the most popular models between the three, and they are certainly three different models that are argued about as far as which is best for EDC. Not just in terms of, overall, but like little things like the locking mechanism, the blade shapes, all this different stuff. So I thought, hey, Ricky, why not stir the pot again and talk about three knives that many people love for different reasons, and find out what we think is good or bad about each one. And here's the reason I'm doing this. If you're familiar with my channel, then you know that most of what I do is U.S. Made stuff. And I love U.S. made stuff. And I have a really hard time getting anything that's not made in the USA. For example, the Spyderco Gale Bradley. I want, is it the Gale Bradley 2 that's in M4?
I think so.
It's made in the Taichung, Taiwan factory, and I've heard a million times that the fit and finish there is great, and they make excellent knives, but I just can't stand the thought of my knives saying Taiwan on them. I'm going to have to get over that because the world is changing. There will still be U.S. made premium knives, but there, in the knife community, there's all of a sudden this more widespread acceptance for these foreign made knives. And I don't want to be that stubborn guy who's like, I'm not going to look at that because it's not made in the United States. I am going to have to broaden my horizons
Eventually.
and stuff. But these three dominated my world for the last, like, 6 or 7 years. I don't know how long the 562 has been out, but these three have been a big part of my world for a long time, and I have different levels of respect. Actually, I have massive respect for each one for different reasons, so I want to talk about these. Let's get all of these out and talk about what these are. We're going to have to imagine that each one of these is base, because they're not, actually. The 562, of course, is my titanium version, so this is fully upgraded. This Benchmade Griptilian has been featured once on my channel before, maybe when I went over blade steels. This is a 20 CV Benchmade Griptilian, first production run. This is one that I put together for my brother. So this is his knife. And then this is Ricky's Spyderco Paramilitary 2 in S30V and G10. Three amazing EDC champions right here. So let's talk about each one. The 562 is, of course, a titanium frame lock. This knife comes in three forms that are in consistent production. You folks who commented on our video where we talked about what we wanted if we had unlimited funds, you pointed out, hey, you should have had pictures when you talked about that. You're right, we should have. So we're going to try and do a little something like that today. If you would pull up the picture of the standard 0562 so we can present to people. The standard ZT-0562 coming in S35VN at $200 would be the base form of this. The upgraded version of that, of course, in carbon fiber, the 0562 CF from your phones or wherever you're watching this. Probably hard to tell, but that's the upgraded model. There's same satin finished guide lines there. That comes at $240 carbon fiber and 20 CV. And then, of course, the full titanium version, which was just released. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing with the camera here. $280 for titanium and 20 CV steel. Excellent. Moving on to the Benchmade Griptilian. This is a heavily upgraded version. You do, of course, have the the standard FRN or plastic model that comes in at, I think they're about $110, coming standard at 154 cm. And then you have, and you're gonna have to Google this one. I'm sorry, we didn't get this one. The 550-1 is actually your upgraded G10 model there. So we'll get that going. Real quick here, just to give Ricky a moment. These are AWT or Applied Weapons Technology aluminum scales that are aftermarket. They're not something you can get through Benchmade. These are excellent scales, and they've held up beautifully despite this knife not really being used much. Ricky found a perfect picture here of the upgraded 20 CV Griptilian, because not only does it show the different steel scales, it actually also shows the alternative blade shape, which is the sheep's foot blade. These come at about $175, I believe, is what these run right now. They do have G10 instead of that plasticky, really cheap feeling scale that I don't like and will never ever own. And then on the inside of those scales, which you can't really see, is actually a blue G10 liner. So that's pretty cool. So that's your upgraded version of the Benchmade Griptilian. And then of course, Benchmade has custom shop Griptilians that are internal with Benchmade. You can get a whole bunch of Benchmade custom parts and custom, all this stuff made with Benchmade. If you want different steels, D2, S30V, M4, 20CV, different color G10, blah, blah, blah. You can get all that stuff through Benchmade, but you're going to pay for it. Or if you are, if you consider yourself a more aftermarket modular person, then maybe you go out in the aftermarket and you have a custom one made. And that's the nice thing about the Griptilian, is there is a plethora of aftermarket parts that are available for it. Ricky will give an example here of somebody who's done something interesting with a sheep's foot version and some sort of honeycomb material there. Actually, I know what that stuff's called. I just forget it at the moment. Beautiful.
I think you're pretty close there.
Yeah, some sort of honeycomb stuff is what you want to Google.
Honeycomb stuff scales.
Exactly. So that's cool. That's neat about the Griptilian. In this form, you're running $170 plus the $85 it costs for the scale. So something like this, it's gonna be around $250. And then there is, of course, there used to be the Doug Ritter Griptilian. There is not a Ritter Griptilian anymore, but that blade shape was just absolutely fantastic. And then you could, of course, upgrade those scales as well, because it's the exact same body, the cartridge liner that they put inside those. So that's cool. Moving on, we have the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, the standard form, pretty much this, just a different coloration in G10 and S30V. Ricky will show you a picture of that there. Fantastic. Comes in about $135, $136. That's about right. Maybe even $137.
Whew. We're getting up there now.
We're getting up there.
That's getting crazy.
They also have the premium version of it, the S110V version with Blurple G10 scales, coming in at, I believe, $155, $160, something like that. It's more expensive and it's slightly more premium. Very interesting. And then you do, of course, have an amazing amount of sprint runs and also your dealer exclusives, this being the Blade HQ CPM M4 and JG10 version of the Paramilitary 2. So there's a whole bunch of those. The point that I'm getting at here is that we have 3 knives that come in many forms, basic and premium, that are all pretty close to the same size. All have great ergonomics, all have different locks, but functional, dependable locks, and they're all the way around amazing. And for the most part, you can get what you want. These two are going to be less customizable than this one, but even still, you should be able to get close to what you want. The 562 is a titanium frame lock, no matter which version you get. The Benchmade Griptilian is an axis lock, and the Paramilitary 2 is a compression lock. So you've got 3 different locks. As far as which one's the strongest, I don't know. They're all really strong, guys. All 3 locks are very dependable. When it comes down to manipulation of things, they've all got little drawbacks. Somebody mentioned it in a video the other day. The 562. See what's happening here? This is known as the double clutch. I almost sliced my finger off there. You have got to get it past that detent ball, and you have to back your thumb up. You can't do it right here. because then you're not past the detent ball. You got to move back. Now you get past that detent ball and get the blade in there. You're going to slice your finger off. So you really have to get back here, past that detent ball, then come down. But it can be done. The axis lock has fantastic manipulation. I mean, this thing is just beautifully smooth. You can fire it out a whole bunch of different ways. Really easy. It's one drawback. Inside here are little tiny thin omega springs. You can see them wrapped around the head of that axis lock. If one of those breaks, it's a pretty big deal, because this becomes useless and it flaps all over the place, and you've got to jam a stick in there or something to keep it functioning. If you're in a dire situation, you need to keep using it. It's not going to work unless you've got something holding that bar up against the back tang of the blade. That is really rare, though. I will admit it's very unlikely that the omega spring will break. But that is a weakness of the axis lock, a potential weakness. The Spyderco Paramilitary 2, this has a very strong locking system and very easy to manipulate. You can kind of, if you get it exactly right, you can kind of swing it just right and get it shut.
I haven't been able to do that for a while on that one. I think I need to give it a bath.
Oh, okay. Well, then no fault.
Pretty gunked up.
Ricky just needs to give his kid a bath here. Get it cleaned up a little bit. The only thing that I don't like about this lock is that how I position my hands, I'm holding on to a very small amount of the knife, and I have both paramilitary 2s that I have owned, I have dropped them because I get too excited trying to put it away and like look cool, and I just whip it out of my hand and throw it against the floor. And that's probably just me, because most people really like that and don't have an issue with it. I think it's an excellent system. I have no issue with it whatsoever. So pros and I'm sorry, I don't have any other issues with it whatsoever in terms of the lock. Other things that might be considered drawbacks for each knife. Your ZT-0562 has bearings, and while that does create a situation for amazing action, and some of the best flipping action in the world, actually, you do not have an ideal setup in a dusty or dirty environment, because dirt and debris will get in there. And while it does a good job of kicking a lot of that stuff back out, there is obviously a certain point where this is going to gunk up before this does, because this is on phosphor bronze. So that is an issue there. Not necessarily the biggest issue in the world, but it is something to consider. With the Griptilian, unless you upgrade to the G10 model, what you have is, in my opinion, those FRN scales. You have a very not durable. I have had to literally rip the scales off of multiple Griptilians because they Loctite those teeny tiny. And a lot of you guys are going to know. You're going to be, oh my gosh, that guy's speaking the truth. He knows. If you have ever had to take apart an older Griptilian with those itty bitty little tiny screws that get right here, they Loctite the absolute crap out of those things, and then you strip the screw, you can't get it off. The only way to get that scale off is to break it. And that's when I realized, these scales are actually super brittle and I don't trust them. On top of that, they've got a cartridge liner in here. There's nothing wrong with a cartridge liner, but when it's coupled with that those plastic scales, I don't really like it. So every Griptilian that I've ever owned, which is like 5 or 6 now, I have upgraded to G10. I've upgraded to micarta. I've upgraded to carbon fiber, to aluminum. One day I'll have a titanium one. I just will. Oh man, a titanium Doug Ritter would just be like the greatest thing ever. But that's the only downfall there. Other than that, though, the Griptilian is just, it's just about perfect. It's just an absolutely amazing knife. The Paramilitary 2, I only have one gripe, and you've heard it recently. When you're holding it like this or like this, there's too much handle. There's just too much. This is the biggest knife out of the 3, and it has this ridiculously huge handle when you are comparing it to the blade. And it's just kind of awkward in that way. Those are the things that I don't like about each model. Ricky has been very kind and let me blab on for 14 minutes here. Is there anything that you don't like about these before I talk about what I do like?
One thing I don't like about the 0562, and I don't know if it's just because I'm not used to it, but I don't like the shape of the flipper tab.
Okay.
Like it kind of digs into my finger weird, because for some reason it gets pointy there at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has a function or if that's just how they decided to make it.
It's an interesting point. You're not the only person who have ever complained about that. This is, on the Rick Hinderer, they have jimping back here because on the old Rick Hinderers, they didn't have a good detent setup, and it was designed, it was not designed primarily as a flipper tab, and it was actually primarily designed as a finger guard in this position, and its secondary function was a flipper tab that had jimping back here so that people would push button flip it instead of attempting to light switch it, which was not nearly as possible on the older, the Gen 4 and back Rick Hinderer models. ZT adopted the exact same flipper shape on the 562 because when they evolved from the 0550 to the 0562 in the Hinderer collaboration, they wanted this one to be as Hinderer-y as possible. So they kept it that way. So yeah, but I mean, that's a good point. The nice thing is they didn't put the jimping back here like they did on the XM18, which would definitely mess your finger up. This finger has taken quite a beating over the years from flipping my Hinderer knives unnecessarily for hours and hours and hours. Let's see what else. Okay, so your each model, like I said, comes in different variants and things, and one of the nice things about the Griptilian is it's not only modular, but you have two different blade shapes that you can choose. I'm sorry, actually there's more than that. There's the Tanto, and is there another blade shape? Can't remember. There's multiple blade shapes: sheep's foot, Tanto, and drop point at least, plus the Doug Ritter grip Griptilian blade shape, which used to be available. And you've got multiple handle materials, so much available in terms of getting exactly what you want. Now, its base version is the least expensive of all three. But its base steel is also probably the least premium, 154 cm, though it's still a great steel. But getting exactly what you want with the Benchmade Griptilian, the downside to that, unfortunately, is that it will cost you. It will cost you likely more than you're wanting to pay for said materials. Do I think that the one right here in front of me is worth $250? Yes, I do, because I can touch this and feel this and hold it and use it, and I can see the value there. To a lot of people, that are comparing what they see online or, what they've touched and felt before, and, having not held, a custom-made Benchmade Griptilian, they may not see that value there. Different people relate different materials to different values. If this is $280 and this is $250, a lot of people are going to go, well, I feel like I get more with the ZT. It's not necessarily true for every person, but the downside to going with Benchmade is that you're going to have to pay a lot more for what you perceive is worth it there, and that's a general issue with Benchmade right now in general. I keep saying general. So that's kind of good and bad there. The Spyderco Paramilitary 2 has probably the, if you were to take a poll with 10,000 people or 1,000 people or 100 people, you're probably going to get most people voting for the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 every single time, because it's just, it's overall, that's what people prefer. I'm not going to lie. The other thing that I don't like about it is how thin that tip is. That tip is the most likely to break of all three models. It does probably have the sliciest blade shape and probably the most convenient to deploy, or the blade shape that has the most deployment methods. I don't know. Whether or not a certain blade shape or deployment method is functional to you is going to be different to every single person. I'm going to say right now, I can tell, with what I still want to say, this is going to be a long-running video. So at some point, this video is going to attempt to cut out, and I will edit it to sort of excuse that. Plus, I know Ricky's got more to say, too. Comparing the tips again, though, you've got a super robust tip on the 562, a 0.155 stock thickness. You have a thinner, I want to say it's a thinner blade stock on the Benchmade Griptilian, but you do have a more robust tip on the Benchmade Griptilian. And talking about blade shapes again, I will say that the Benchmade Griptilian is probably the least slicey, though it is a very, incredibly well-performing blade shape. It's just considering the geometry of the blade, where it drops from the flat versus the ZT-0562 slicer grind, which is very slicey, and slicier yet, the flat ground blade of the Paramilitary 2. So all three have unbelievably functional blade shapes, whether you get the, I'm not so big a fan of the Tanto in the Griptilian, But the sheep's foot blade and this version of it, very functional. It is worth noting, however, that all Benchmade Griptilians seem to have a toothier edge. Drag your fingernail down that and see. You can see what I mean. It's an unused edge. See how it's different? Now try that one.
I'll hold it so I don't cut my finger. I kind of see what you mean.
Yeah, I was like, here, Ricky, drag your finger down that.
As my hands are shaky from my workout and you're shaky.
Yeah, I've got too much caffeine in me. Ricky's got too much pre-workout in him. Anyways, you know, those are some of the things there in terms of the blade to consider. Pocket clips that come on these guys. Big fan of all three for different reasons. One of my favorite pocket clips that exist is the Spyderco spoon-shaped clip. Big fan of that, just because of how your finger falls into that divot when you pull up. There's a reasonable amount, not a crazy amount of the knife sticking out of your pocket, but a normal amount. Benchmade's deep carry clip and their split arrow clip and their standard flat Benchmade clip, they're all great. I love those. You can get different ones there. That's a nice thing, is that you actually have a modular choice with pocket clips on the Griptilian. You don't without going aftermarket on the Spyderco. Same with the 0562. In fact, even on the aftermarket, you're pretty limited. There are some custom clips out there, but there's not many people making clips. I mean, and the reason is that this thing has this what do you call that when proprietary? It's got this proprietary thing where it loops in back behind the standoff there, and it makes it so that it's really hard to find aftermarket clips for it, because they would have to function exactly the same way. All three of them, if you break the clip, you can get another one from the manufacturer. However, Spyderco will charge you money, whereas Benchmade and ZT will just send you another clip. I have about 482 Benchmade clips in my possession right now. Not really, but I have a lot of Benchmade clips. So that's something to consider. By the way, this ZT0562 and the tie does not come with this hardware standard. I put this hardware on there because I don't like the factory black stuff, and I polish the clip myself with 600 grit sandpaper, then 1000 grit sandpaper, and then steel wool to get that like that. Hey, the video is not cutting out, so that's pretty cool. I guess it's just going to let us keep going. Anyways, let's talk about weight. The 562 in titanium or G10 or carbon fiber. Actually, the carbon fiber is the heaviest, I heard. Really? It's like 5.7 ounces or something like that. Okay. Ounces is your range here. Oh, no, it is going to cut us out. Guys, if we cut out here, sorry, we're just going to keep going. The Benchmade Griptilian, I want to say its standard form comes in at about between 3.5 and 4 ounces, though I could be completely incorrect. I'll have to edit this video anyway, so I'll put it in there. And the Spyderco, actually, I think this is a little heavier. I think it's 4.5 ounces. Okay. Then the Spyderco, I believe, is actually the least heavy. We're not going to know here since this one's got the aluminum scales on it. 3.7 ounces. Does that sound correct? 3.7 ounces with it being the longest or largest knife, though I don't think it actually has the largest cutting edge. I think it actually has the shortest cutting edge. I think the ZT has the most cutting edge. And I think the Spyderco has the least. Yeah. So the Benchmade's a little longer there. How about here? The ZT's a little longer than Benchmade. So the Spyderco, with the choil there, that's what's misleading. The extra choil and the handle give it a look like it's got a longer blade, but it doesn't. It's the longest overall, but it does not have the longest cutting edge. So something to consider there. Ergonomics. How about the ergonomics? All three of them have excellent ergonomics. They are all perfect. I wouldn't be able to tell you which one I like the best because they're amazing. I will say, if I had to pick one, honestly, despite me having the issue with the extra handle back here, I'm going to give it to the Spyderco, and here's why. Because it has a forward choil. Come on, ZT. Come on. Why don't you have a choil? Like, the Hinder XM18 has a choil. The Griptilian has an excuse. This thing should have a choil. Like if you agree with me. I really wish that the ZT had a choil. I love it without the choil, but I think I think I'm gonna have to give ergos to the Spyderco. I think it's worth giving up a little bit of cutting edge to have that extra hand position up close to the blade. You can try and risk it with the Griptilian, though I wouldn't call this safe by any means. I would say that's a good way to, oh, look at that. I've probably recently cut my finger. Oh, that's where I cut my finger with the, I did the S&M gun stock video earlier, and I cut my finger.
Oh.
Yeah, right in the middle of the video.
Did it bleed everywhere?
No, in fact, it got me, and I wasn't sure, and I kept talking, and I was like, oh, did it get me? Oh, yeah, a little bit. But yeah, it did. It bit me a little bit. Here's something interesting. These two have lanyard holes, whereas the 562 does not. And, you know, you can just kind of force a lanyard up into the pocket clip area up there at the top if you want, and it'll still go into your pocket. You can do that. Though you run a greater risk of the lanyard coming undone and falling out, since it can slip right out of the pocket clip loop. But these two, you know, also have lanyard holes. You can see there Ricky's got his lanyard plugged in there. Plugged in is how I said that.
Just plug the lanyard in.
Any additional observations, likes or dislikes that you want to point out about these knives?
It is kind of crappy that this one doesn't, the 0562 doesn't have a ton of aftermarket clip options.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like if anybody were to change a clip on any of these, this would be the last one, because it's so deep carry already. Like, you can't get more deep carry than that.
Right.
Like,
that
that's
is
as deep as it gets.
that is as deep carry. Any deeper than that, and you're just showing off.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how deep do you need that thing to ride in your pocket? You know.
So, like the Paramilitary 2 is this the standard one that comes on the Benchmade?
No, that usually you have to request that. The only time that comes on the upgraded $175 20CV Griptilian.
Because I do really like this clip, because it's still kind of a deep carry. Not a huge fan of the Paramilitary 2 clip, but like you said, they're easy to get. But if you're not going to customize anything, I think this one has the best clip.
Okay.
In my opinion.
All right, cool. I would agree with you there. I'll say this. By the way, these two run on phosphor bronze. It's really hard to pick one of these, because, you know, and you know what would make it really easy? You need that picture of the Benchmade Anthem out. Benchmade could have won this competition for me easily if the way that they did the Benchmade Anthem, and for those of you who are not familiar with the Benchmade Anthem, this is it. That's their $400 integral, which if it were not $400, I might own that. I'm sure that knife will make an appearance on this channel one way or another. Who am I kidding? The way that they do that axis lock is they actually have a different system. It's not Omega springs. It's got an actual coil spring in it, much like the Manix 2, which is why, if you've heard me talk about the Manix, why I like the Manix 2's similar locking system better than the Griptilian, because it doesn't have Omega springs. It has that little coil spring, which I trust a lot more. If they had done their axis lock on the Benchmade Griptilian like they did the Anthem, then this would be the clear winner. It's the only thing holding me back from this guy. I'll say this. If you've got $250, because $250 will buy you an excellent version of any of these. Yep. I mean, way overboard for this. You can get the Spyderco for way less. If you've got $250, right, and you want the most modular, customizable knife between the three, your answer is the Griptilian, because this is an excellent knife. Despite the ever so minor issue that I have with the possibility of the Omega springs breaking, which, by the way, would be under warranty if you did not customize it, this is an excellent knife. Don't let me scare you away from the Benchmade Griptilian just because of what I said about the Omega springs. It truly is an excellent knife. So if you want the most customizable modular version of that, and you like kind of the ease of manipulation with the axis lock, and you want a dependable, straightforward thumb stud deploying folding knife, and an instant classic, or a classic that's been around for a long time, yeah, go with the Griptilian. If you want a flipper, titanium frame lock flipper that runs on bearings. That is a collaborative effort between a company that is notorious for building overbuilt knives and a guy who actually has a background in emergency rescue services, and he was a fireman, Rick Hinderer. If you like the idea of that, and you kind of like a little bit of extra heft, you kind of like that overbuilt feel, you want a large testosterone boosting knife, then the 562 I think is your way to go. On top of that, I will say I think the 0562 probably does have the best fit and finish. So if you're kind of a snob when it comes to like making sure every last little tiny thing lines up correctly and you want everything to be as beautiful as possible, ZT's really good at that. Their fit and finish is excellent. It's not to say that the Griptilian or the Spyderco are not. They kind of get a little bit plainer. Now this one I've got here that I did for my brother, it's a little flashier, but just know it. You're not gonna get this type of scale standard with a Benchmade Griptilian. That's just what's on this one. Now, if you want the most straightforward functional tool of the three, and maybe you've only got $160 to spend, that's okay, because you can buy a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. And you'll be right in line with what everybody else considers the best of the three, because most people will tell you the Paramilitary 2 is the best. I have my own thoughts on why the majority of people think that, and I think that it's because it costs less. But I will admit, it probably is the most straightforward tool. It's the one where between these three, I would be the least hesitant about pulling this out and using it for something really like, I'm just going to pull it out and use it and put it back in my pocket. Yeah. I have the least reservations for this one. And that's just because I know that this thing was purpose built. They weren't sitting around going, how can we make the spine of that look really attractive? They weren't thinking about, how can we make this screw on the non-show side look really nice for the collector? They weren't necessarily thinking about that. They were thinking, how can we make this thing function as good as possible in as many circumstances as possible? And I do appreciate that about the Paramilitary 2. So my pick, honestly, truthfully, my least favorite is the Paramilitary 2, and I think everybody knows that. It's just the handle thing is what's killing it for me. And between these two here, I love this one. But like if this right here was a Doug Ritter M390 Griptilian in titanium, and it would cost about the same. Oh my gosh, I'd have a hard time. And in my head, I have to compare the ultimate in my own mind between the two. It's a tie between these two for me, honestly. I love this one, but the downfall of this one is what I always say about frame locks. The harder you use them, the harder you squeeze them, the more you're going to move that lock bar in, and it locks up later and later and later. And then you're going to have to mess with that. You're going to have to mess with the warranty and mess with the insert and all that stuff. It's not going to be the same thing with this one, because you can squeeze it as hard as you want. You're not going to mess with that axis lock. So, if it came down to a pros and cons list between these two, these are going to tie for me. What about you?
I think I'm going to I would go on the side of the PM2 because it's so cheap.
Okay.
Like if we're going over for an EDC, like I really like these two. But for whatever reason, maybe it's just because these two specifically haven't been used a ton. They look really nice. Like, I like these knives, but they're more of ones that I just kind of play with or look at.
Right.
Not that they're outrageously expensive, but as a knife I'm actually going to use, I think I'd go with the PM2 just because it's like, I'm pretty sure I got this one for like $115.
Yeah.
Like, it was something stupid.
That's a fair argument.
Yeah.
The Paramilitary 2 has that amazing, thing. And despite it looking like a folding pelican, it has that thing about, and the premium version of it, the S110V version of it, which by the way, guys, is still a premium, a stainless steel with ridiculous edge retention, higher than 20 CV, in fact. That's only $160-ish, somewhere around there. And yeah, you're not getting carbon fiber or titanium in the handle, but that it comes down to a point where you have to ask yourself, do I need that?
Right.
Am I going to be doing something with this knife that's going to require that material? Do I need a material that's stronger than G10? Most of the time, I can answer that for you. No, you're not. Is the 562 Is it going to take more abuse than the Paramilitary 2? In a lot of ways, yes. You know, I know that there's going to be somebody in the comment section that's like, have you seen that video where they do the spine whack on the ZT and it disengage? Yeah, I've seen that. I don't like the spine whack test, and I've gone over that. There are a whole bunch of angles that you can do destructive things to, where you can do destructive things to knives and get their locks to disengage. And I don't think that doing the spine whack test on a ZT is any sort of definitive test for durability. I do think that because of the bracing lugs on the frame, and in a situation where you'd be using these knives the way that a knife should be used, that this knife can handle more force this way than either of these. I think that these two will warp and fail before this one will. And that's just my thought on that. You don't have to agree with me. That's totally fine if you don't. That's just what I think. But both of these are plenty strong. Under normal use, these will all work perfectly fine. And they are all absolutely deserving of their place as EDC champions amongst these three manufacturers. Absolutely. Do we have anything else to talk about? Here's the thing. Between these three, I love the way that these fall in line against each other. You have an axis lock thumb stud deployer. You have a titanium frame lock flipper. You've got a thumb hole deploying compression lock. You have three very different knives. Like, I mean, they couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
You know, but they all fall into this, like, that would be really good for EDs. That'd be so convenient. They're all convenient. They all go in and out of your pocket really easily. They're all made out of really good materials. They all function extremely well, you know, and you'd think that that's not very much to ask for with a pocket knife. You'd be surprised. When you really get into it, you find out that there are a whole bunch of pocket knives in the world that are just kind of stamped and pressed and nobody really thought about it. But these three, you know, love and care and work went into these, you know, when these were designed, and they're so perfect that, you know, it's knives like this that fuel a channel like mine,
right,
that give us something to talk about and go, man, these are all so good. What can we even say that's bad about them? And I feel bad actually pointing out the things that I don't like about these, because the list of things that I do like is too long, and no one would sit here. In fact, we're coming up on 40 minutes now. There's probably only 2 of you left still watching. But I can't do a video like this without doing really, you know, this kind of stuff is just like boiling up inside of me. I want to talk about it so bad because I feel very strongly about it. And I know that we're about to hit an evolutionary step in the world of folding knives, and that these three kings have seen their time, and I honestly think that it's about over for these three. I think the fact that ZT's doing a titanium version of this is they're kind of like, here's what you wanted. We're getting close to where we're gonna kind of go a different route. The Benchmade Griptilian, you know, same kind of thing. Same thing with the Spyderco. Actually, truthfully, the Paramilitary 2 will probably be around, in the year 3000. But you know, they're going to keep trying to evolve these things, and this is getting to be kind of, you know, the bearing flipper frame lock is getting to be an old thing. This standard axis lock is getting to be an old thing, and the standard compression lock is getting to be an old thing. And they may be around for a few more years, but I promise you, we're coming to the end of a time period with these knives, and I wanted to get this on my channel and talk about it and give my thoughts on it, because I've owned multiple of each of these. 6, 2, and 3. Crazy.
That
right?
is crazy.
I don't know. Anything else that you want to add, Ricky? Anything that you find interesting about one knife or the other, or anything like that? What's your least favorite?
I think my least favorite is the Griptilian, just because I've handled it the least.
Okay. All right. So that'd be the one that if I had to convince you to buy a Griptilian, I'd have the hardest time.
Yes. Also, a lot of these, I guess with the exception of Spyderco, but for whatever reason, it seems like you see Benchmade like in stores really often, and for some reason in my head, like if I could just walk down the street and buy it, it's not as valuable. So I think the butterfly has kind of that effect on me.
Right, because we have 3 places in town where we can
Yes.
buy Benchmades, but no places in town where we can get Spydercos
But
and
well,
CTs.
at the same time though, there's Spyderco as their real cheap line that's at Walmart, and I kind of forgot about that.
That's true. That's true. But you know
still.
that those aren't, like, we don't consider those the same.
Yeah, they're like barely even a Spyderco.
That's mean. Actually, the Spyderco Tenacious is a great knife, everybody. We're not coming down. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, hey, if you guys want, vote for your favorite in the comments section. I like that. Just know that this was mainly just for fun. We love these knives, and if you love these knives, then we love you too. And we love your comments. We just don't want anybody to, get upset with each other or get upset with us. But all of these are excellent. If you're considering buying any of these, then you have selected correctly already. And if you can't decide between all 3 of these, buy all 3 of them. Buy all 3 of them multiple times. That's what I did, and I'm doing all right.
In Metal Complex tradition, just buy all 3.
Yeah, no, don't blow your whole paycheck on knives. But if you have the means to acquire all 3 and you're financially stable, then get them all, because they'll all bring you great joy, and use them. They are all 3 fantastic users. And I have more experience with these 3 knives than any knife in terms of use in my entire collection, or any knife that I have put my hands on over time. So I can confidently say that any of these will make a great user, and they'll make anybody very happy. So that is pretty much it for today, guys. If you stuck around for this whole video, then God bless you. I appreciate that. That's really awesome. For new subscribers, welcome. For my original subscribers, thank you. Thank you to everybody. I'm having a blast with this, and I'm very motivated and very happy to put videos up as often as possible. It is really makes me happy to see that people are interacting and are subscribing, that people care, so that's really cool. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And if you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive. So please check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then subscribe to my channel, and also follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.